Hi, it's WRTV's Ray Steele. I hope you like this video. In fact, I hope you will click that like button down there and click the subscribe button too so you don't miss the new stuff. Or you can click the subscribe button at the end of this video. Really appreciate it. We're in the heart of the special session now as the debate continues over abortion rights, some added social services tied to abortion rights, and inflation relief. And at least when it comes to abortion rights, no one seems to be happy right now, or not completely happy. Let's talk to our political insiders about that. Democrat Arielle Brandy, Republican Bartlett joining us today. Thanks both to you for joining us and for being part of the segment. Let's talk about the abortion rights bill, Senate Bill 1. As we are recording this, the debate in earnest in the full Senate on Senate Bill 1 will begin later today. And Allie, I'm going to start with you because there still seems to be, I know our friend Whitley Yates had another word for it, but I'm going to use the word conflict between some factions in the Republican Party over just how far this should go when it comes to restricting abortion rights, as at least most of the Republican caucus seemingly wants to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Whitley hit the nail on the head with her sentiments last week. There is still a massive division within the party that's undeniable about the right thing to do here. We've seen a lot of debate already in committee. We've seen a lot of testimony from the public. And I think that the senators are really going to have to take that to heart as they debate the issue further today on the Senate floor, like you said, with the full Senate. We're going to see a lot of emotional and passionate speeches from a lot of them. They've been listening to their own constituents, which they should be doing. And constituencies throughout the state have different perspectives. So they're going to bring it all to the table. And I think hopefully that will yield the best outcome.
Before I get to Arielle, I do want to make mention that there is one less member officially of the Republican caucus, Senator Mike Young from Indianapolis, resigning from the caucus, saying he had a lot of issues in dealing with, as he puts it, who lives and who dies. Now, with all due respect to Senator Young, one might think that kind of comes with the territory in being a state lawmaker. You have to make tough decisions like that. What did you think of Senator Young's decision to leave the Republican caucus, even though he certainly will still be a very conservative Republican vote within the Senate?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, this is an emotional issue. This is an issue that hits home for everyone. I actually think the words that Senator Young used were meant literally in some ways, picking who lives and who dies. That's a lot of what this is about. And it's a very raw emotional issue. I'm not inside Senator Young's head. I don't know. I wasn't in the caucus room when he made that determination. But I think at the end of the day, we're going to see that this is something that just really hits home for people. And there may be drastic moves like that happen just because of the nature of what we're talking about.
Arielle, what are Democrats thinking right now? Because obviously Democrats can't stop whatever legislation or whatever form Senate Bill 1 and ultimately a House bill ends up coming together. But there would seemingly be a chance to influence that in some direction, given that there is division within the Republican Party as far as terms. I know there was an amendment added to Senate Bill 1 reflecting rape and incest, that an abortion in case of rape and incest would only be allowed up to 12 weeks of pregnancy for those under 16, 8 weeks of pregnancy 16 and older. And again, that's subject to change. But what kind of influence do you think Democrats have here, given that the other amendments authored by Democratic senators were simply pushed by the boards by the Republican supermajority?
Yeah, I think Ali hit it on the head. I mean, a lot of people on both sides of the aisle are very frustrated right now with how this bill turned out. I mean, when we heard public testimony, the public testimony that we did get to hear from, which was not very much reflective of how many Hoosiers actually signed up to testify within those last 2 days. People are frustrated on both sides. They're saying, no, this bill is not where they wanted it to be. And I think it's a time for legislators to really take into consideration that we didn't get to hear from all Hoosiers. So while, legislators have been, opening the opportunity up for public testimony to happen, that stopped at a certain point in time. Republican legislators cut it off early, and not all voices were heard in this process. So I think that's one of the biggest issues that we have. And when that was brought forth by the Democrats in a super minority report, it was shut down. And so I think that's one of the things we have to consider, is that not all of the voices of Hoosiers right now are being considered in this process. And a lot of these restrictions are honestly worse than what we thought they were going to be. Now we've added criminal penalties into this bill, and it would allow for doctors to have, up to 1 to 6 years in prison and a $10K fine if they decided to be able to give an abortion to a childbearing person in the state of Indiana. That's something that I think we're going to have and see an outpouring of physicians ending up leaving because they're going to have to make a decision about whether or not they save a patient. Now, when it comes to those different exceptions of incest and rape, here's where we get into a lot of trouble. One, we're saying that in order for you to be able to receive an abortion in the state of Indiana, legally and safe, as it has been in the state of Indiana for years now you have to be essentially violated as a woman in order to be able to receive that kind of care. That's something that I think that we need to reconsider. That should not be the only way in which you can receive reproductive health care in the state of Indiana. Now, the other issue that I have with this bill is the affidavit part. And I think that's the part that not a lot of people are really talking about as much. Because when you're looking at this affidavit, you're essentially saying, before you can even receive this care at a certain age, you have to put yourself before a court with this affidavit and say that you want to be able to receive an abortion. And then on top of that, it's placed on your permanent health record. You're labeled as a patient of rape and incest. What does that say for survivors and people who have gone through a very traumatic experience in their life, to say that you have to go before a court official and be able to plead your case in order to be able to receive some kind of reproductive health care? That's a little backwards for our state. And I think that when we're looking at being able to provide women with opportunities to make a choice, we need to consider something that is going to be better for Hoosiers. And I don't think that this is the answer. And we need to be pushing better to do more, because women are going to die. I mean, Allie's right. And so are the Republicans. When you're looking at the consideration of life, there is a lot to consider right now. And the grim outcomes, as we've seen in testimony, are being put forth for us right there in front of our faces. Women are going to die because of the fact that Republican legislators are deciding to make this one of the most restrictive abortion bans in the country.
Allie, what about some of that? Because it would seem that if some of those provisions are not in there, you're going to lose Republican votes based on that very testimony, or some of the testimony that Arielle was referring to.
Yeah, so I've been around the legislature for about a decade now, and I will say that the best legislation that comes out is the legislation where almost no one is happy, because that means that we are somewhere in the middle. So, when we're hearing this overwhelming negative testimony on both sides, that's pretty much probably what we're going to see throughout this entire process, because you can't please everybody. We never will. And in order to get into the middle ground, there are going to be people that are unhappy on both sides. I will push back on a couple of things there. To say, women are going to die, I want to point out that there is a provision that it is an exception for the life and health of the mother. That was a very intentional exception that was included. And regarding the Democrat amendments in committee yesterday, I will say that today, all 3 Senate bills, as well as the House Bill 1001, are on second reading in both chambers, which will allow amendments to be presented on both sides. I think that the nature of the committee hearing was that it was going on for hours and hours and hours, and that there was an opportunity for the amendments to be heard today. And so they pushed the amendment process to second reading, which still allows amendments to the bill to be presented from the Democrats. So I don't think there was any ill intent there aside from procedure. And we will see all of those amendments today. I think 30 plus filed on Senate Bill 1. 50 plus were originally filed on House Bill 1001. House Bill 1001 did receive amendments in the committee hearing, but we are going to see a ton of amendments presented on the floor today. I don't think there's going to be a disruption in the process in that way.
Arielle, I asked one of our other Democratic insiders about this a while back. I'll ask you, what would be the likelihood, do you think, of a chance that Democrats, and this might be more likely in the House, where there are more Democrats than there are in the Senate, really, proportionally. What's the likelihood of them working with some of the more moderate Republicans to pass a less restrictive bill, even though that would put Democrats on the record as voting in favor of some abortion restrictions that we know that you and almost all other Democrats don't favor? Is there any likelihood of that in the special session?
I mean, I think we saw the opportunity there when we did have one member of the Republican legislature, be in favor with Democrats. That's not the impossible. I don't think that that's something that we can't see happen in the state of Indiana. I think, as Allie stated in the beginning, there's a divide within her own party. I mean, and that's just what comes with the nature of talking about an issue like this. I'm glad that we're having this discussion because it's a long time coming for us to start saying and talking about the word abortion in a way in which it gives people the opportunity to not only share their public story and how it's impacted them, but it gives also an opportunity for us to hear from the medical providers, the people that are licensed to be able to do this safe medical procedure, to put it forth. So I think there is an opportunity there for Democrats to be able to work across the aisle to get some work done here on this bill. I think one of the things that we kind of see a little murkiness with in regards to life of the mother, and Allie mentioned this, I think it's, at what point do we say that a woman could be at the potential of dying, in which fetal abnormalities could be happening? We heard a lot of testimony from physicians talking about specifically when that happens within a gestational period. And it's not in line with what the legislator has put forth. And so I think we have to consider that, when we're looking at the professionals that are talking about ultrasound tech, opportunities, and how we are able to monitor the fetal within the womb, how does this happen? At what point in time can we make a decision for a woman in which we say that she is in danger of losing her life, or that a fetus is in danger of losing its life? This is where we have to consider that when we have medical professionals telling us the information in which we need to be taking into consideration for this bill, that we should be listening. And I think we're missing the mark on that. But I do see that we have an opportunity to be able to work in the House on both sides of the aisle to come to an agreement in which we can make sure that this bill does not cause any more death within our community. And I think that's one of the most important things, is that we don't want women to die. That is something that I feel very passionately about as a Black mother, and as someone who I know that my outcomes, if I choose to have a child in the state of Indiana, if I choose to get pregnant, if I choose to make a decision, my outcomes are going to be way more grim than my counterpart, Allie. And that is something that sits with me when it comes to this bill. And I don't think that we're taking that into consideration enough as we should. And so I'm really hoping that we can uplift, the people in our state that are really thinking about this, and really take the opportunity to work on both sides to come to some kind of agreement in which we can provide good, healthy, safe reproductive care in the state of Indiana.
Move on to the other topic that is dominating or will dominate the special session. It was the original topic of the special session, and that was inflation relief. Again, conflicting ideas from Republicans. We have the House bill, which provides the direct payments that Governor Holcomb has called for. And in fact, House Bill 1001 would expand those direct payments, not just to give those to Hoosier taxpayers, but to give to those who also don't pay taxes for one reason or another. Presumably, that would raise the cost. We'll have to see what the fiscal impact is. Senate Republicans, however, Allie, are not on board, or at least not a lot of them are on board with those direct payments right now. Their inflation relief deals mainly with the gas tax and some reform of some other taxes. Will there be any inflation relief, do you think, come out of this because of the disagreement, seemingly, over providing direct payments to Hoosiers?
I do think that we are going to see some inflation relief effort come out of the special session. Like you said, this was the intent before the overturn of Roe versus Wade. I think it's important on the minds of legislators. I think it is actually valuable that we're having the discussion on both methods for inflation relief. There was pushback on both sides. Is the 225 number, the return, enough? Would it reach all Hoosiers? Which was there was an effort by the House to address that. And then on the other side, when we're talking about reductions in the gas tax, well, are we benefiting people that are really just driving through the state and not, benefiting Hoosiers directly enough? There's flaws in both. There's positives to both. I think it's actually productive that we're having the discussion on both options to find out where the best middle ground is in order to help Hoosiers combat inflation that's really just getting worse every day.
Arielle, I've heard that Democrats do favor direct payments to Hoosiers. But I saw an interesting argument from, I believe it was Representative Delaney yesterday from here in Indianapolis, that the money that would be dedicated to those direct payments could be better put to use for long-term investments in education and other projects, using that surplus money for something like that. Will Democrats line up behind direct payments, or do you have other ideas, again, considering Democrats' position in the legislature right now?
Yeah, I think we do have an opportunity. And I do know that Democrats do want to make sure that Hoosiers can see some kind of relief. That's something that we all can agree on because we know how bad Hoosiers are struggling right now. So it was good to be able to see that some of the amendments that were brought forth, specifically one by Representative Campbell, was included in this process. And so I do think that Democrats do want to be able to see some kind of relief. I think the issue that we see here is that in regards to other bills, especially with Senate Bill 2, we were able to see that amendments were brought forth to be able to provide more funding to other issues when it comes to K through 12, mental health, maternal and infant health, and public health. All of those ways in which we could improve quality of life and give some kind of relief or some kind of, advancement to the programs and resources that we can offer here in our state, they were all shut down. So if we're going to talk about being able to provide or be, a pro-life, suggested, state, or have a legislature or supermajority who believes in that, I think we need to be investing in those services too to be able to provide that. The $225 relief check is only going to go so far when it comes to providing the Hoosiers with relief. So hopefully we can come up with a better option as we continue to debate this.
Our political insiders, Republican Allie Bartlett, Democrat Arielle Brandy, thanks very much. We'll talk to you soon.